I thought the woman I loved would say yes when I got down on one knee, but instead she looked at me like I just asked her to jump off a cliff. That Friday night changed everything I believed about my future. My name is Marcus. I'm 29 years old and I design websites and logos for small businesses in Seattle. Most days I drink way too much coffee, ride my bike when it's not pouring rain, and call my dad every Sunday morning. I've been with Olivia for 2.5 years now. She's 32, works as a lawyer at a big company downtown, and keeps her whole life organized in color-coded lists. I thought we were heading toward marriage. That whole week before I planned to propose, I couldn't focus on anything. I kept opening my nightstand drawer just to look at the ring box, like checking on it would somehow make sure it was still real. I'd made a reservation at this fancy French place across town for Friday night. I called ahead and asked for a quiet corner booth, somewhere private. The guy on the phone laughed and said he'd take care of it. On Friday, I got a fresh shave at the barbershop, put on my best navy suit, and practiced what I'd say while driving downtown. Just be honest, I told myself. Tell her why you love her. Tell her she makes chaos feel manageable. That her smile is different when it's just the two of you. That she solves problems faster than anyone you know. In my head, the whole night was supposed to go perfectly. Olivia showed up right on time wearing a dark gray dress with her hair falling loose over her shoulders. The second she saw me, her eyes narrowed just a little. "Why are you so dressed up?" she asked, but she was smiling. "Big work thing Monday," I lied. She didn't look convinced. The server showed us to our table in the back corner. The room was dim and warm, all wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where people talk quietly. We ordered drinks first, then wine. She asked about my week and I tried to answer normally, but my voice sounded weird even to me. After we finished our main course, my heart started pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. I looked across the room and caught the server's eye. He gave me a tiny nod and turned away like we'd never made eye contact. I put my napkin on the table, reached into my jacket pocket, and slid out of my seat onto one knee. I didn't give a big speech. Felt wrong to make it sound rehearsed. I just opened the small box and said, "Olivia, I want to spend my life with you." For just a second, her face went soft with surprise, like someone called her name from far away. Then her eyes dropped to the ring, came back up to my face, and something shut down behind them. Her hand went to her throat the way it always does when she's stuck between two bad choices. "Marcus," she said quietly, and I knew from the way she said my name that her answer wasn't yes. She shook her head once, slow and certain. "I can't. I'm so sorry." Nobody around us stopped eating. A fork clinked against a plate at the table behind me. A server walked past carrying a tray like nothing unusual was happening. I stayed on one knee for another second, then closed the box and stood back up. My face felt hot. She reached toward my hand, then stopped halfway and folded her hands in her lap instead. We paid the bill. The server moved like a ghost, polite and invisible. Outside, the air was cool and the street was busy with people and cars. We stood under the restaurant awning like two co-workers after a boring meeting. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, looking at the sidewalk. "I don't feel that kind of love anymore." I kept trying to get it back. I thought if I waited long enough, it would come back. It didn't. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. "Is there someone else?" I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "No," she said fast. "I promise. This is about me. It's not fair to say yes when I can't give you what you think you're getting." I wanted to say 100 things. Only one sentence made it out. "Thank you for being honest." We walked to my car. The valet jogged off and came back with my old Honda, handed me the keys like it was any other Friday. I drove her back to her place without saying a word, hands gripping the wheel, that ring box feeling like it weighed 10 pounds in my pocket. A couple walked past us on the sidewalk carrying takeout bags, laughing about something. A man loaded plants into his trunk. Everything looked normal, like the world hadn't just rearranged itself without asking me. When we got to her building, she unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. "Can we talk tomorrow?" she asked. "I think we should. I just need tonight to think." "Okay," I said. It was the only word I could get out without breaking. She touched my arm, light and quick, then pulled away. "You're a good person, Marcus," she said. "I'm really sorry." She got out, closed the door, and walked toward the glass lobby doors with her back straight and her head up. I watched until the doors swallowed her. Then I just sat there with the engine running, my jaw so tight it hurt. My phone buzzed with a group text from friends planning to watch the game Sunday. I flipped it face down on the passenger seat. The car filled with the quiet hum of the air vents. Driving home, I didn't cry. Not because I'm tough, but because I felt empty in a way that makes crying impossible. At a red light, I took the ring box out and stared at it sitting on the seat next to me. It looked like something I could return to a store. Back at my apartment, my roommate wasn't there. The living room smelled like laundry detergent. I shoved the ring into the back corner of my sock drawer, stood in the hallway, and listened to the building settle and creak around me. I wanted to call someone, but I couldn't imagine saying the words out loud. I brushed my teeth too hard, washed my face, and lay on my bed staring up at the ceiling fan spinning in slow circles. When I finally fell asleep, it was light and broken, my brain jerking me awake every few minutes. Every time I woke up, I saw the moment her mouth shaped the word no. It wasn't angry. It wasn't mean. It was just certain. That's what kept cutting through me over and over. I woke up Saturday feeling like I'd been in a car accident but couldn't find any bruises. My phone showed 3 texts from Olivia. The first one said she hoped I got home safe. The second said she couldn't sleep. The third just said, "Can we talk later?" I stared at the messages until my screen went black. The silence in my apartment felt too clean, too still. I made coffee, stood by the window, and watched a man walking his dog on the sidewalk below. Seeing other people live their normal lives felt like someone was rubbing salt in a wound. Around noon, I gave up and texted her back. Sure. We met at her apartment that afternoon. She looked tired but put together the way she always does after she's been crying, like she'd already sorted her feelings into neat folders in her mind. She offered me water, sat across from me on the couch and said, "I owe you a real explanation." I didn't interrupt. "You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus," she said. "You've been wonderful, but I don't feel that kind of love anymore. I've been trying to force it back for months. It's not fair to either of us." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tiny shake that happens when someone's holding up a wall with both hands. I nodded even though my throat felt thick. "You could have told me before last night," I said quietly. She looked down at her hands. I kept hoping I'd feel it again. I thought maybe I was just scared of commitment. But when you pulled out that ring, I realized I was scared because I didn't want to say yes. It wasn't cruel. It was worse than that. It was honest. I didn't make a scene. No begging, no trying to change her mind. I just said, "Okay," because saying anything longer might have broken me in half. She tried to smile, but it came out like a half breath. When I left, she hugged me the way people hug someone who's moving to another country. Outside, the sun was bright and sharp, almost too much. I got in my car and sat there with both hands on the wheel, not starting the engine. It was over, and somehow that felt impossible to believe. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, this is Natalie. I know this is random, but I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. You didn't deserve that." Natalie, Olivia's friend from college. I'd met her maybe twice at dinners. She was younger, maybe 26, with this laugh that filled up whatever room she was in. I waited a minute before typing back. "Thanks. It's been a weird couple of days." Her reply came almost immediately. We all thought she'd say yes. Honestly, I would have. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. I didn't know if she meant it as comfort or something else, but it hit me right in the chest. We kept texting. Simple stuff at first. Work complaints, movies we'd seen, annoying Seattle traffic. But every few messages, she'd say something that landed too close to the truth. "Olivia overthinks everything. You're the kind of guy who actually means what he says. That scares people like her." I didn't know how to respond, so I just sent back a smiley face. She replied, "Wow, your texting game is embarrassing." For the first time since Friday, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt human and real. By midnight, we were still going. I caught myself smiling at my phone and then felt guilty about it. I barely knew her. She was Olivia's friend. Still, something about the way she talked felt solid, like talking to someone who already knew the worst thing about you and didn't care. When I finally put the phone down, I realized I hadn't thought about the proposal in hours. That made me feel guilty too, but also lighter. Monday morning at work, everything looked the same. Same coffee stains on the kitchen counter, same sound of keyboards clicking. But it all felt different, like I was watching it through glass. I kept checking my phone for messages from Natalie. When it buzzed during a meeting, my heart jumped. Coffee later? I promise not to bring up your tragic failed proposal. I laughed quietly and my boss gave me a look. That evening we met at a small cafe near the water. No big plan, no expectations. She showed up wearing a denim jacket and sneakers, her hair pulled back, looking like someone who didn't need to prove anything. She started talking like we'd known each other for years. So be honest, she said, stirring her drink. Was the food at least good? Actually, yeah. Great mushroom risotto. Terrible memories. She grinned. Well, next time we'll go back and replace the bad memory with a good one. The way she said we caught me off guard. I didn't correct her. We talked for almost 2 hours. Childhood dreams, embarrassing first dates, stories about our families, weird things that happened at work. No awkward pauses. No forced conversation. When she laughed, it was real and loud. When she listened, she actually paid attention. Driving home that night, I felt lighter. But then the guilt came creeping back. Olivia's face. Her quiet apology. That ring still hidden in my drawer. It all rushed back like a wave. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a friend being kind. But lying in bed that night, the conversation kept replaying in my head. The way Natalie said, I would have said yes. Those words stayed with me longer than Olivia's no. Tuesday morning, Natalie texted again. You know, some people spend their whole lives waiting for perfect timing. Sometimes they just need the right person. I didn't know exactly what she meant, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something alive. Something that didn't hurt. And for the first time in days, I felt like maybe my story hadn't ended at that restaurant after all. By Wednesday, the silence between me and Olivia had become normal. No calls, no texts, no closure beyond what she'd already said. I tried to focus at work, but my brain kept drifting. Everything reminded me of her. The smell of the coffee she always ordered. The way she double-checked the door locks before leaving. You don't notice someone's habits until they stop echoing around you. That afternoon I went out for lunch. The cafe near my office was packed with people on laptops and phones. I ordered my usual black coffee, found a corner table, and scrolled through work emails I couldn't process. When I looked up, I saw her, Natalie, standing at the counter. She spotted me right away and waved with this half-smile that was already starting to feel familiar. Hey, heartbreak boy, she said, walking over. I laughed even though it hurt a little. Please don't make that my permanent nickname. She sat down without asking. Too late. It's catchy. Then her voice got softer. But seriously, how are you doing? I've been better, I admitted. But you don't need to worry about me. I kind of do, she said. Olivia's my friend. But I also think you deserved better than what happened. There was no hesitation when she said it. No fake sympathy. She said it like it was a simple fact. That made it hit harder. We ended up talking for over an hour about things that had nothing to do with Olivia. She told me about her job taking photos for small businesses and artists around the city. She complained about her landlord who kept forgetting to fix the elevator in her building. She showed me pictures on her phone of old film cameras she collected but never used anymore. I stopped taking real photos a couple years ago, she said. I thought nobody cared about that kind of work. You should start again, I said. It suits you. She looked at me like I'd said something important, even though it was just the truth. When she stood up to leave, she paused and looked right at me. You know, if I'd been the one you asked that question, my answer would have been yes. Then she walked out before I could figure out what to say. The rest of the day I couldn't stop replaying that moment. Not just what she said, but how she said it. Not flirty. Not dramatic. Just honest, like she'd decided it was better to say it out loud than leave it hanging in the air between us. That night she texted, "Sorry if that was weird earlier." I typed a response, deleted it, typed another one. Finally I sent, "It wasn't weird, just surprised me." Good surprise or bad surprise? Still figuring that out. Let me know when you do. Next coffee is on me. I stared at my phone screen way too long, smiling like an idiot. The next day around 6 o'clock, she showed up outside my office building. "Figured you could use some fresh air instead of more coffee," she said, holding 2 iced drinks anyway. We walked down to the waterfront where the sky was turning orange and pink over the water. I told her everything about proposal night, how Olivia's face changed, the exact second I knew her answer before she even spoke, how the restaurant kept going like nothing happened. Natalie listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she said something quiet. She's always been scared of people who make her feel too much. I stopped walking. What does that mean? She plans everything down to the minute. Her whole life is about staying in control. You can't control love, and that terrifies her. It didn't sound like gossip. It sounded like truth spoken carefully. We found a bench looking out over the water and sat down. She stared at the horizon and said, "Life's strange. People say no to what they actually need and yes to what feels safe." I looked at her, wondering if she knew how personal that sounded. She turned and met my eyes. "Don't look at me like that," she said, but she was smiling a little. "I'm not trying to steal you from anyone. I'm not anyone's to steal anymore," I said. That made her laugh, but there was something warm underneath it. She reached out and touched my jacket sleeve. Just a small touch, light and natural. "Good," she said. "Then maybe we're just two people who needed to meet when everything else was falling apart." We sat there talking as the sky got darker. Travel places we wanted to see. Food we loved. Movies that made us cry. Every time she laughed, something tight in my chest loosened up a little. I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath since the breakup. When I drove her back to her building later, she leaned against the car door and studied my face. "You seem lighter," she said. "Maybe I am. Then that's something." That night I couldn't sleep, but not from sadness this time. From confusion. I kept asking myself what this was. Was I just trying to fill the empty space Olivia left? Was this even real or just two lonely people finding comfort? Around midnight my phone lit up with another message from her. "Just wanted to say you made today better. Hope that's okay." I typed back, "It is. Thank you." Right before I fell asleep, I caught myself smiling again. Different from before. Not because I'd forgotten about Olivia, but because for the first time I wasn't only thinking about her. Over the next few days, Natalie quietly became part of my regular life. Not in some big dramatic way, but in small natural ways people slide into your world without you planning it. We texted every day. She'd send things like, "Coffee or complete chaos this morning?" And I'd reply, "Both." At first I thought it was just friendship. Then I started noticing how often I waited for her messages. How I'd replay things she said just to feel that warmth again. Thursday evening she texted, "Dinner? I found a place that doesn't require reservations or emotional baggage." I sent back a laughing emoji and said, "Lead the way." The restaurant was this cozy Italian spot tucked behind a bookstore. Low lights, quiet voices, the smell of garlic and fresh bread everywhere. She was already sitting at a table when I got there, wearing a loose beige sweater with her hair down. She looked comfortable and real. When she saw me, her whole face brightened. "Okay," she said after we ordered. "Rule number 1. No talking about Olivia." "Deal," I said. "Rule number 2. We just enjoy the food and each other's company." We talked for hours. Childhood dreams we'd given up on. Stupid mistakes we'd made. Stories about our families. She told me she used to paint before her job took over all her time. I told her I once tried writing a book and quit after 5 pages. It wasn't flirty. It was real. The kind of talking that builds something between two people without either person noticing it's happening. After dinner, we walked along the waterfront. The air was warm and full of life. Music floating from a bar nearby. People laughing on benches. Natalie walked next to me, swinging her jacket by one finger. "You know what I like about you?" she said suddenly. "What?" "You don't pretend you're okay when you're not. Most people fake it all the time. You just exist as yourself." I smiled. "That's one way to put it." We stopped near the water where city lights reflected off the surface in ripples. She looked out at the view and said quietly, "Sometimes we lose something good just so we can find what's actually right." I turned toward her. "You really believe that?" "I do now," she said, looking up at me. "You shouldn't look so surprised." "I'm not," I said, even though I was, because in that moment I realized she meant every word, and she wasn't talking about anyone else. We kept walking and our hands brushed once, then again, until finally, without thinking, I just took her hand in mine. She didn't pull away. It wasn't romantic like in movies. It was simple. Two people realizing they didn't need to explain what was already happening between them. When I drove her home later, she leaned back in the seat, quiet but smiling. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "For what?" "For letting it be easy." I walked her to her apartment door. She stopped and turned to face me. "Marcus, don't overthink this. It doesn't have to mean anything complicated. Sometimes two people just find each other when they need to." She touched my arm lightly, said goodnight, and went inside. I stood there for a minute staring at her door. For once I didn't feel like I was betraying Olivia or rushing into something new. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about filling empty space. It just felt right, and that was enough. That weekend Natalie and I spent the afternoon at a small art fair downtown. Rows of booths with paintings and sculptures and handmade jewelry. She stopped at one booth showing abstract paintings and stared at them for a long time. "I used to make stuff like this," she said. "Why'd you stop?" "I thought nobody cared. Seemed pointless." "You should start again," I said. "It's part of who you are." She looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between grateful and sad. Later we bought tacos from a food truck and sat on the curb eating them. One of my tacos fell apart and landed on the street. We both laughed so hard people stared at us. There was no awkwardness between us. No pretending to be something we weren't. Everything felt natural and unforced. That evening when I got home, I saw a missed call from Olivia. My stomach tightened. I didn't call back right away. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely. But she texted a few minutes later. "Can we meet? Just to talk." I stared at those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no. Another part knew there were still loose ends between us that needed tying up. When I told Natalie about it the next day, she didn't get jealous or suspicious. She just nodded and said, "You should go. Sometimes people need to say things out loud so they can let them go." Her calmness surprised me. "You're okay with that?" She smiled. "Marcus, you and I aren't locked into some contract. Go get your closure. You need it." That evening I met Olivia at the same cafe where Natalie and I had talked that first time. Olivia looked nervous, holding her cup with both hands like it was keeping her steady. "I've been thinking a lot," she started. "I think I made a mistake." I stayed quiet and let her talk. She said she missed me, that she'd panicked, that maybe she did still love me after all. I waited until she finished, then said carefully, "I don't hate you, Olivia. I never could. But I think we lost what we had before you said no. It was when you stopped seeing me the way you used to. That happened months ago." She looked down and I could see her eyes getting wet. "Is there someone else?" I hesitated for just a second. "There's someone who's been kind to me. That's all I know right now." She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer. "Then I guess that tells me what I needed to know." When I left the cafe, I texted Natalie. "It's done. You okay?" "Yeah." "Strangely, yeah." "Good," she wrote back. "Because I bought movie tickets and you're coming with me." That night, sitting next to her in the dark theater, I realized something simple but true. Healing doesn't always look like crying or therapy or waiting for time to pass. Sometimes it looks like laughing in the middle of a movie with someone who showed up exactly when you needed them. 3 weeks went by. 3 weeks since that conversation with Olivia at the cafe. 3 weeks since I'd closed that door and quietly walked through a new one I never expected to find. Natalie didn't ask for details and I didn't offer them. She just kept showing up like always. With coffee. With that easy smile. With this calm energy that made the world feel lighter. We'd started spending most evenings together. Sometimes cooking dinner at my place. Sometimes just walking through the neighborhood talking about everything and nothing. There was no pressure to define what we were. No big speeches about the future. Just peace. Real quiet peace. One evening we sat on my apartment balcony watching the sky fade from orange to deep blue. She had her legs tucked under her, holding her mug with both hands. "You seem different," she said. "Good different or bad different?" "Better," she said. "You used to talk like life was something happening to you. Now you sound like you're actually living it." I smiled. "I guess I'm learning." She looked over at me with soft eyes. "You know, I was worried at first that you were just trying to fill the space Olivia left." "I thought about that too," I admitted. "But what I feel with you doesn't come from trying to fix something broken. It's just there. It's real." She didn't answer right away. She just nodded slowly. Then she said quietly, "I wasn't supposed to meet you this way, but I'm really glad I did." That sentence stayed in my head long after she went home that night. The next weekend Olivia sent me one more text. Not trying to get back together. Just a short message saying she'd accepted a job in Denver and would be moving within the month. "I hope things work out for you," she wrote. I stared at her name on my screen. No anger. No sadness. Just closure, clean and complete. I typed back, "Take care, Olivia. You'll do great there." And that was the end. No dramatic goodbye. No meeting in person. Just two people finally letting go of something that didn't fit anymore. That same day Natalie invited me to a small art gallery opening. She'd started painting again. Something she hadn't done in years. "Don't expect too much," she warned me in a text. "I'm only showing 2 pieces." The gallery was small and tucked between a bookshop and a bakery. I found her near the back talking to someone who worked there. When she saw me walk in, her whole face lit up. "You actually came?" Of course I did. On the wall next to her were 2 paintings. One was abstract, swirls of blue and gray that somehow felt both heavy and peaceful at the same time. The other was simpler. A single figure standing alone on a bridge with blurred city lights behind them. I didn't need to ask what they meant. "They're beautiful," I said quietly. She smiled. "They're about starting over. About things we don't plan for but end up needing." When the crowd thinned out later, we stepped outside. The evening air was cool and smelled like fresh bread from the bakery next door. Natalie leaned against the brick wall, looking at the lights across the street. "So what happens now?" she asked. I laughed. "That's a pretty big question." "I mean for you," she said. "You've been through a lot in a short time." "I think I'm done trying to figure everything out," I said. "I just want to live my life and see what happens." She nodded. "That's probably the smartest thing anyone could do." We stood there quietly for a while. Cars going past. Someone laughing from a nearby patio. Then I turned to her and said something I'd been holding inside. "You know, I never told you this. But that night Olivia said no. It felt like my whole life just stopped. Like everything I thought was solid just fell apart in 10 seconds. "I can imagine," she said softly. "But now when I think about it, I don't feel broken. I feel grateful." She raised an eyebrow. "Grateful for getting your heart broken?" "For where it led me," I said. Her smile grew wider, soft but real. "Careful. That almost sounds like you're confessing something." "Maybe I am." For a second she just looked at me, studying my face. Then she reached up and touched my cheek lightly. "You really mean that?" "I do," I said. She stepped closer, still looking right into my eyes. "Then say it again." "I'm grateful," I said quietly, "for everything that went wrong. Because it brought me to you." That's when she kissed me. Slow and steady and certain. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just 2 people who'd been through enough to recognize something real when they found it. Afterward, she rested her head against my chest. "You know what's funny?" she said. What? I almost didn't text you that first night. Thought it would be weird because of Olivia. I laughed softly. Glad you changed your mind. Me too. We walked to my car holding hands. No big promises about forever. No dramatic declarations. Just a quiet understanding that we didn't need to define this to know it was real. When I got home later, I opened my sock drawer and pulled out the ring box one last time. I looked at it for a few seconds, then closed it, walked outside, and dropped it in the donation bin behind my building. Not because I was angry, but because it belonged to a different version of my life. A version I didn't need to hold on to anymore. That night Natalie called me right before bed. "Hey," she said softly, "just so you know, if you'd asked me that question, I would have said yes." I smiled, lying back on my couch in the dark. "Yeah," I said. "I know.